Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 34 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Karl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today from yet another different angle by my ever-present co-host, John Goodall, lead cloud engineer at Logicata. How are you doing today, John?
Ever present and ever moving. I'm all right. Can't complain.
So you decided that last week's angle wasn't your best side after all?
I mean, no, but I've got the proper camera sort of over there-ish, and I was going to try a different angle completely, and it just decided it didn't want to play ball with us this morning. So I'm on the backup camera, hence I'm zoomed out a long way, and you can kind of see all the wall and various bits of other things that are kind of still in
Soft
shot,
furnishings.
on brand as well.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, the joy of tech. Always have a backup, I think, is the moral of that story there, isn't it? So N+1 on the studio equipment. Nice work, John. Good to have you with us. We're also joined today by a very special guest, fellow AWS Community Builder, Abhishek Gupta. How are you doing today, Abhishek?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me over this podcast. I'm really excited to talk with you guys about it.
Nice.
And definitely,
tell
I'm
us a bit
traveling in
about,
the spaceship. So
yeah, you are. Yeah. Your background is far more interesting than John's, I have to say. His walls look
thank
very grey. I'm sure they're
I've
not.
got
But
a
maybe it's
cushion.
just oh, you got a cushion. Yeah. It's not very high
definitely
tech, though, is
exciting.
it? So, Abhishek, tell us a little bit about what you do for a living, where you come from, what you do for the community, etc.
Sure. So I'm working as a senior DevOps and security consultant at MindMaze, working remotely. So I never experienced office in my entire life. I've been working remote from my till my start of my career journey, and basically I am into AWS and having specialization in it. And recently I became a community builder in security identity, and I have been into reinvent a lot from like being from the got invited from the AWS ABW grant and get started with it to the AWS community events. And basically, after going through the sessions and events, I got to know that exactly what I'm doing is not the real things. The people community, they are doing this so much more than exactly what I need to do. So then I out from my career journey, I started learning about the certification path, where basically I enhance my skills and upskill myself from time to time, no, not requiring any mentor, and self-learning and road mapping myself, and then upgrading myself, upskilling myself with mentorship programs, where I indulge myself into mentoring a lot of freshers, experienced folks who want to come into the industry. Here they want to learn as a SRE, DevOps, or they want to indulge into the cloud environment with no experience or so little bit exposure, and they want to enhance themselves. How I made myself up, and they want to come up into this journey and get into this AWS and learn more about it, which helps obviously has how market is transitioning quickly and from monolithic infrastructure to Microsoft infrastructure, and then basically we are going up to the AI. This is kind of every day you cannot be keep up alone. So obviously it's like a collaborative learning is one of the one thing which makes things easier, simpler for us for the continuous learning. Yeah, so this is something about a little bit about me, and I'm working from my old love country, India, working from the small place Ludhiana. Yeah, so
So
would love to discuss about it.
you've shattered the illusion now, Abhishek. I was going to say you are the most remote worker we've had on because you were coming in from space, but
Definitely.
it's
That's the
obviously
beauty of it.
an AI generated background. That's just ruined it for me. But no, it's, but no, it's really great to have you on, Abhishek, and hopefully we'll also get to meet you at reInvent if you get the chance to go this year, because John and I will be attending in Vegas in December. So we're looking forward to meeting all of our previous podcast guests who are able to attend. So as regular listeners to the podcast will know, once a week, I curate a list of AWS news, which I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John and I pick a subset of the articles that we'd like to talk about with our guests. So, of course, we have such a set of articles this week, which John and Abhishek have read over the weekend and have come fired up, ready to talk about this morning. Sorry, I hope I haven't hammed that up too much there. So, the first of the articles for this week is really just a feature announcement. And this one is all about the fact that Amazon ECS now supports AWS Graviton-based Spot compute with AWS Fargate. So this potentially could be one of the cheapest ways to run your containers in AWS, I guess, John. So talk us through it. Why did you pick this one?
That's kind of the idea. Yeah, I picked on this one because, for starters, I didn't know Fargate Spot was a thing. And I'm like, okay. And then the whole Graviton thing. And I like Graviton. And the more often we put things about Graviton and ARM in things, the more ARM lists we get put in on the internet. And then we get more shares. So ulterior motive. But right, let's just go through this because there's a few bits here. And it's not a very long article because it's just an announcement. But there's a few bits I just want to kind of pick through. And we can kind of go from there. So the first thing. Fargate, right, that's a capacity provider for ECS or EKS. And the idea is that you don't have to provision any EC2s to run your workloads on. Fargate just handles all that for you. Brilliant. We like that. We like that a lot. The next thing, Spot compute. Now, Spot compute is more traditional for servers than for Fargate because in a server-based world, with EC2s in particular, you can provision them in a number of ways. On demand is the most expensive, but you just sort of say, I'll have one of those, please, and you pay the hourly rate. Then you've got reserved, and then you've got Spot, and then there's provisioned as well, but we won't go into those. Reserved, you kind of prepay, and Spot, you get a massive discount, but the caveat is they can take your server away with, I think it's 2 minutes notice or something of that nature. It's like a very short period of time. So you get an awful lot of money off because you're kind of sitting in the periphery of the free and spare capacity that's not being used by reserved, provisioned, and on demand because you're kind of bottom of the tier, but you pay a lot less for it. Brilliant. The way Spot works traditionally is you supply a bid price, which is I'm willing to pay up to this amount. And because capitalism, I think, when capacity in Spot goes down, the price goes up until you kind of hit your bid price, and then eventually they just take your servers away completely. Bosh. Wonderful. That's how that works. Now, Fargate, you don't have to worry about any of that because you just say, run task for me, please. And I guess traditionally that's actually run on demand instances kind of in the background somewhere. You haven't had to care about that, but that's presumably what it's done. Fargate Spot is kind of blurring that a bit, and you basically say, I want you to run on a Spot instance. I can cope with you going away with 2 minutes notice. Give me discount, please. You still don't have to worry about the server per se. It's all kind of managed for you. But you're getting this kind of middle ground where you're saying, I'm okay with my capacity going away with, I think, 2 minutes notice. It might be 3, it might be 1. It's in that kind of ballpark. Like, I'm okay with my capacity going away with limited notice because my system is architected in such a way that I can handle that. It's a fault tolerant architecture. It's a fault tolerant application. Containers are great for this kind of thing because typically they are quite fault tolerant, particularly if you're running, more than one instance or more than one instance is the right word, instance of that container. So you can just kind of move the load around as your capacity goes away, and there's things that will run in clusters that kind of help you with that as well. And that's good. We like that. Anything to give you discount is good. And all this announcement is saying on top of that is there's now an ARM setting for Fargate Spot, because even in this day and age where almost everything runs quite well on ARM, I mean, I'm talking to you through an ARM machine right now, there's still the odd workload that requires 64-bit x86 infrastructure that just can't run on ARM. And up till now, Fargate Spot was only x86. Now it's ARM. Great. So yes, as you say, this is probably the cheapest way of running. It's probably not the cheapest of running your containers because EC2 is traditionally cheaper than Fargate because Fargate you pay for the management fee, but it's almost certainly the most efficient way of doing it. And this would be the most efficient way of running your ARM infrastructure, I would think.
You're also talking to us through a microphone boom arm. It's a different kind of arm. Anyway, on that note, Abhishek, your thoughts on this?
Sure. So as like John shared that it's about the cost. They are actually helping us to reduce the cost on the overall architecture. So in my company, because we are completely microservices, and with my clients, this is kind of a major problem. That yeah. So earlier before it with the before Fargate, we need to decide exactly which node instance type we have to decide. Like, okay, I need to what's instance type I need to reserve it to lower my cost when I'm actually going on a production application. It's kind of a mess. Like, okay, I go for C5 AX large or C5 large or some, like, in the regional changes are there, and this is management of instances additional burden on us, which kind of problem for us. Like, now the Fargate introduced, which is kind of saver for us as a developer. If I'm going I don't want to get indulged myself into the settings of instances, I just select Fargate, and my scalability, my availability, my everything is sorted for me. And now this kind Graviton ARM based system has been introduced, which actually AWS is promoting heavily, which is kind of cheaper for me to use in the longer run and manage my system very efficiently. And now I don't need to take burden of it to configure how my behind the scenes my nodes are being managed. It's just like I went there. If I'm using a microservice application using ECS as a managed definition, you just go and deploy my task definition. That's all, and use my Fargate Graviton processor, and I'm not only saving my cost, but it's easy for me as a convenience as well as a developer. I don't need to bother about it. I don't need to learn about it much. I just made a pretty convenience fee about that of the Fargate management. But definitely, who is indulgent to microservice applications, this is a kind of a very significant change they have made. And on top of it, like introducing Graviton, now companies are moving towards higher microprocessing and fast forward application, and they're definitely a lot of devices are coming around with ARM based chips. So definitely indulging into their application optimization needs requires to be compatible to those processors, because ARM based and x84 architectures are completely different. You need to have my application migrated. So this is kind of a big move by AWS as well. Might look a small move, but yeah, and the impact wise, it's kind of a big move, where basically as a developer, as a starter, if I want to test my application, I just go ahead and deploy it, and I'm saving my cost. I'm also not worrying about exactly my configurations at the part, and I'm okay to deploy as much as applications I can do. And on the production level, I can say that is kind of again lifesaver, because now the thing is that when I'm deploying into several country regions, I do not need to bother about exactly, okay, which region offers me what type of instance settings or costing. I just deploy Fargate. I deploy the, like, now the spot based pricing, as I said, like as John mentioned, that if it's out of my bed, I'm gone for good. So in I cannot go beyond the development environment. So if my production is gone, what I'm good for? So kind of thing with the Fargate, the relax that I have around me, that the stability, that okay, even if it's done, we have instant setting changeovers which I can provide. Like if a C5AX dot large is not available, then find me, like we can have a list of priorities of settings defined there behind the scenes, and which can help me to basically make sure that if that spot server is not available, then another spot server is allocated to that and attached to the my cluster, which helps me to get the highest scalability and making sure that my cost always down, which is kind of why that's why a lot of companies were moving to serverless, to make sure to have less and less of dependency on the service configurations. But now this is being introduced within the container-based system, which a lot of companies are basically diving deep into this microservice infrastructure. So definitely it's a big jump to it, and I'm likely to interact with it and see exactly how I can enlarge it into my applications as well.
Nice. Efficiency and cost optimization. That's what we like. That's what the cloud is all about. So, on that note, let's move along to our second article for this week. This is an article from the AWS Developer Tools blog about Linux support updates for AWS CLI v2. And have to admit, John, I tried to read this article. It seems to be written in a foreign language. So, I'm looking forward to you explaining it to me a bit more.
Foreign language. You saw glibc and thought that was a word, didn't you?
Yeah, glib. Yeah,
Glibka. Glibka. Okay, so this is, it's a minor announcement, but it's kind of important, so it's worth talking about. So the AWS CLI previously had version 1, now it's on a version 2. Version 2 has been around for ages. Brilliant. Amazon AWS have, over the past couple of years, have sort of redone how the installer works for the CLI v2. And for the uninitiated, what the CLI does is it allows you to interact with AWS resources without using the console or using Terraform or CloudFormation or whatever. You use the CLI, you issue CLI commands, things happen. Some of the things that you can do with that CLI actually are running CloudFormation. So, it's a bit kind of Ouroboros-y, but that's kind of the point. It's you don't have to log in and look at a GUI to do things. You do it through the CLI. That's not strictly through code, but it's more not developer friendly, because most developers I've ever worked with don't like the CLI. It's more operator friendly. It's more DevOps friendly, if you like. It's people like me are more used to that. Great. Over the past kind of few months and years, they've changed how the installer has worked for a number of platforms. So on Windows, you get your MSI installer and you just install it. Previously on Mac, there was a brew tap, and now that's a community version rather than the official version. And there's a GUI installer for that. And all this is saying is that previously you did an apt-get or a yum install for the CLI. That's fine. What they've done is they've just issued a formal policy for Linux distribution support, and they've backed that into the GNU C library, glibc. That's what that is, just so that it's tracking glibc versions, so that there's now an official policy where there wasn't before. And yes, before you come for me in the comments, it's Linux plus GNU. I know. Go back to compiling Arch. Go away. No one actually cares. But that's basically all that's saying. They now have a formal version support. So as you track glibc versions, you track CLI versions. That's it. There's a little thing there saying that they're built using Docker images published by the Mini Linux project, and basically, so long as the Linux version, the glibc version, is supported by the Mini Linux project, it'll be on the it'll be supported by the AWS CLI v2. That's it.
Nice. Anything to add on that, Abhishek? It is a fairly short article, so there's not a huge amount to talk about, but interested to hear your thoughts.
Definitely, it's like a small update, as John said, that small upgrade is done to the CLI version, where they have shifted some policy change and added some sorted some vulnerabilities behind the scenes as well, to make sure that the CLI is always up to date with the latest libraries. But yeah, going the back date, when 2020 CLI, how CLI was that time and now how CLI is kind of, from that change, is quite a big change have happened throughout the journey. But yeah, having the Docker support, and then basically they are updating the libraries with the 2.79 plus version upgrade for glib. So this is kind of a great initiative, but still the Python libraries are pretty old, like to be said in the CLIs, and that needs to be manually upgraded. And a lot of places they are keeping it, and which is hard to upgrade. So always need to have that in focus. But yeah, I would love to see that Python version update from 2.79 to 3 version they are using, so that at least we can retrieve latest applications and latest settings all around and libraries into it, and don't face those challenges. But yeah, for now this is kind of, I'll say that definitely a good start to for the latest upgrade. But yeah, looking forward to more upgrades coming along.
Nice feature request. It's not the first time we've had a feature request on the podcast, so hopefully, if the Right to Pizza team is listening, you may get your wish, Abhishek. We shall see.
To be clear, this is American-sized pizzas. These aren't little British pizzas. These are American-sized pizzas. And I can do this because I'm in a wide shot right now.
There had to be a benefit for the new angle. I knew there had to be a benefit for the new angle. Anyway, on that note, let's move along to our next article for this week. And this one wasn't written in a foreign language, actually. I was quite interested in this one myself.
I thought you might
for my own selfish purposes. This is an article on the AWS Cloud Operations blog about how you can gain visibility of AWS backup activities using managed Grafana. And if, like me, you've ever tried to gain visibility of AWS backup activities, you'll know that the current ways of doing so are pretty hideous, quite frankly, in the console. It's not easy to get a good overview of what is going on within your estate from an AWS backup perspective. Not to knock AWS Backup, it's a great product and it does what it says on the tin. But in terms of getting data out to see what's going on in there, it's not the most intuitive right now. So anything that can help us to visualize what's going on within AWS Backup is welcome, in my opinion. And I know in the just before we started recording, Abhishek, you mentioned this article yourself. So I'm going to come to you first on this one and get your thoughts on gaining visibility of AWS Backup using Managed Grafana.
So definitely, this is a quite interesting article that they have published. Basically, Grafana is and Promises are one of the key monitoring services which are being used across every environment, and either it's microservice or server-based infrastructure. And now having that managed by AWS and simplified architecture has been introduced by them, where basically I can basically integrate it with my backup applications and monitor the micro level things on a Grafana dashboard, and integrate it with my existing dashboards as well, which is kind of a good move with them, because this was a long requested services, because we were also had a feature request earlier to add to, because we are using AWS backup services a lot, and we didn't have any visibility, and we had to use a custom URLs to and a lambda function to get it integrated to the Grafana dashboard. And now I don't need to use it, I can directly integrate it and don't need to manage the keys and stuff, and I can get it done, which is kind of a great thing. And they have the best part is that they have given the cloud formation template right away. I can just copy it and configure it to my requirements and get it done. But the one thing that I see is that the definitions they have used, services they have used, the kinesis and glue integration, this is something where every developer, if they are integrating it, they have to be a little keen on exactly of the configuration, because if they directly integrate it, the builds are quite hefty in terms of how they are using it. So definitely there's a room of improvement required, but in terms of configuration and in terms of simplicity, this is a kind of a long looking solution we were looking for, but now we have the solution from them, and this is something I really like it, kind of thing. And now I'm just optimizing it to Terraform template so that I can integrate into my company applications as well. So but though I love cloud formation, but having Terraform always is better. But yeah,
You know, you can
definitely this
deploy a
is
CloudFormation stack with a Terraform resource, right? You could have just done that.
true, but having a centralized one view scope is always companies require to maintain consistency.
Well, we look
That's
forward to your blog
counter.
post, Abhishek, with the Terraform once you've done it.
Sure,
And,
sure, definitely, that's coming
yeah.
by the end of the month.
Nice. John, your thoughts on this? Before we do, I'd just like to say the dashboards, I was keen and I tried to zoom in, but they're really grainy images. It would have been nice if they were slightly higher res. But I do love a pie chart. So yeah, kudos
So
on the pie
yeah,
chart.
I don't think this is showing any data that isn't available through just the default views anyway. But the problem with AWS Backup is the default views are a bit nasty, particularly if you're doing more than like a daily backup. So we have a number of different options within our managed service, daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, whatever. And it starts to become annoying to report once it's kind of more than daily, because then within sort of a monthly cycle, you end up with, if you're doing it hourly, how many hours are there? 730, something like that. It's about that per resource that you're backing up. So you can end up very quickly with thousands of backup jobs that are running, and any restores and copies and sort of all the rest of it that you might be doing as well. And the report just gets quite hard. There is a framework that you can run. So you can say, do I comply with my framework, and then run a report against that. But that comes out in a CSV, and then you have to do things like VLOOKUPs and pivots and all the rest of it. And yeah, okay, entire careers have been made on pivot charts in history, but yeah, they're not great. The issue I take with this, and I like this, I really like this. The issue I take with it is, one, can you just make the default outputs in backup easier and better, please? That's always my issue with any of these. Is this is great, we like this a lot. Just make the product default better, so I don't have to have this. That would be much better for me. And two, this isn't going to be very cheap. Grafana is kind of spendy. If you run managed Grafana, it's not free, it's not particularly cheap. So you have to be absolutely sure that this is something that you need as part of whatever it is you're doing with AWS Backup. And maybe you do. Fine, no issues if you do. But say for us, as part of our managed service, this would be a hard sell to say to every single customer that we've got, oh, well, we need to stick this in as well so that the built-in reporting tools aren't good enough, so we have to use this. And this is going to add X amount of money. I don't know how much, and I'd like to find out, and I will probably try and work that out to see if it's, viable in some cases. But I take issue with I have to build it myself. Okay, they've done the legwork and I can just deploy it. And B, it's not going to be cheap because there's a lot of services in here. Grafana's kind of expensive. Athena, you pay every time it runs something against the amount of data that it's running against. So the costs are going to start to add up quite quickly. But it's a cool idea.
Nice. So we like it, but please build it into the product. There's a common theme on many of these posts that we talk about on the podcast. Cool. So on that note, let's move on to the next article for this week, which is an article published on dev.to by a former podcast guest, Johannes Koch, who's an AWS hero. And this is all about, the title of the article is Dear AWS, how do I build and develop purely on AWS right now? And the reason he's asking that question, as we've spoken about on previous episodes, AWS has quietly deprecated a number of services recently, which has made it a little bit more difficult to build and develop purely on AWS. So I know one of these affected you, John. CodeCommit, was it? Or CodeCommit was deprecated, but it wasn't the only one. And this post focuses on the deprecation of CodeCommit and Cloud9. Keen to hear your thoughts on this, John.
Yeah, I picked it because Johannes is a long-time friend of the podcast and our user group as well. And he's got a brilliant network. So if we tag him, we'll get lots of shares. Again, definitely on the Alterias today. Definitely on the Alterias. But he's not wrong. It's how do you now do this entirely within the AWS ecosystem? Because days gone by, and this was very true for workshops and game day events and all those sorts of things, where they'd keep you entirely within the AWS ecosystem because it just made life very easy, particularly for, say, the serverless security workshop that I helped out at the London Summit back in March, April time, and that I want to run for our user group in November. That now has major issues because big parts of it used Cloud9. It was the way you worked is you got your account vended by the event vending system, and you had a Cloud9 IDE preset for you, ready to go, ready to rock and roll. You just went straight in and then ran the initialization thing, and your environment was all set up for you. And that made the whole process of delivering these events and participating in these events so much easier and smoother because you didn't have to worry about getting your IDE to connect to the environment, pulling code from a GitHub repo, doing all that. It was just there. And you didn't have to think about it. So you could just get on and try and start absorbing the content that they were trying to deliver to you. And in some cases, that's really important because you don't necessarily care about all of the other bits around the periphery. You care about the content that you're trying to absorb and, learn. So yeah, this struck me because it was, how do you now develop entirely within that space? And you can't, not really. As Johannes sort of goes on through, there's tools across the SDLC and I think Code's Catalyst kind of still works to an extent because it's still doing the various bits and pieces. It's still probably using CodeCommit under the covers. It's still probably using Cloud9 and stuff under the covers. But you can't just use the bit that you wanted. And again, historically, we've said on this podcast quite a lot, well, why would you use CodeCommit? Why would you use this, that, or the other code suite tool? Because you might need to stay entirely in the AWS ecosystem. You might need to for security reasons. You can't do that anymore. And it's just well worth reading this article because it's taken from the perspective, I guess, of someone that's quite into that space because Johannes is a dev tools hero. So this is his bag, as it were. And he's very in this world, and it's well worth a read and well worth a look because it's a hero isn't inside AWS, but they're sort of like an extension of. So it's almost an inside view. It's like that boundary. We have kind of outside views because we're community builders, but we're not in AWS. Johannes is a bit more in as a hero, and then you've got Ambos and all the rest of it. But it's an interesting view from someone that certainly knows the product area a lot more than I do. And to be fair, he's also gone and built some ways you can run Git inside AWS fairly cheaply, but it was still $50 a month, I think, versus CodeCommit was free. And honestly, CodeCommit can't have been that expensive for AWS to run that they have to deprecate it. I'd have quite happily paid a fiver for it. I'd have paid a fiver. That would have been fine. I don't mind that. I'd have paid £5. That's fine, just so I don't have to think about it. But yeah, it's worth a read, and it's also a very interesting. It's an interesting take, and there's a bit at the end there, sort of near the end, that says, "How does this feel?" Questions that you have emotionally, and this was a very emotive thing because lots of people were very angry, very annoyed about partly how it was done and partly the fact that it was done at all. So, well worth a read.
Anything to add there, Abhishek? Does this
Definitely,
affect
this
you?
is definitely it had me hit hard, because being I have worked for a service-based company, so like I have created several CI/CD pipelines. So definitely, always client use, you asked exactly what source SCC SRC repository we use, SCM repository. My bad. So how many repository, what type of repository we use? Either we go with GitHub or we use CodeCommit. For starters, we have, right. So the thing is that now the question comes here, that exactly should I trust AWS on the services itself? Because now my application is integrated, my CI/CD pipeline is running on the CodeCommit. Yes, I can integrate it with the GitHub. That I can use Bitbucket, anything I can use and integrate it, and OIDC parameters are there. I can get them integrated. But the thing is, additional efforts are being put. We were marketing to the clients that yes, this is a AWS service. You can be assured that is not going anywhere, and this is something which is secure, which is compliant. If you had some issues, just connect with the customer support immediately if we are not available. So you have 24/7 support. Now coming to the problem here, like when I heard this news that CodeCommit is going away, Cloud9 is going away. Now the thing is that a lot of customers or clients are basically in the question whether the other services, code deploy, code build, are going to stay or not. Our complete production, our complete staging setups are there. They are being getting deployed. Should we look for or either an alternative or not? This is kind of a thing now. My clients and everyone in the industry is kind of skeptical about. It's not about the running cost. It's not about like exactly okay, AWS could have bared this cost or not. The point is that they communicated, they dissolve the services out of the blue. And now the thing is, the confidence the client earlier had about the AWS services, now they're just vanishing away, because that they are thinking, okay, code commits can go away right now. Next year, if they completely remove the code pipeline structure and now I have to rework again. I have to pay the developers. I pay hire the consultant against for me and get them integrated, which took me like 6 months, 7 months, 1 year kind of thing to get it set up. I need to get reworked again into it, which is kind of a instability which within the company itself. So depend, and now it's more of like a trust issue coming around, where basically uh, having these services dissolved, though it's a private Git repository before, like when the GitHub OIDC 1 version 1 was there, we need to manually rotate the keys after every 30 days. Now they introduced an app function where in the version 2, basically I can go there and install an AWS app which will automatically take care of for me. But the thing is, most of the clients were like, okay, I don't want to go for a GitHub membership. I don't want a public code registry. I have AWS code commit, I'll use it. Okay, I can use it for my testing, and sooner or later, because they're testing on it, they get compliant with it, they get used to it, they start running their production code in some time. Now, when this news came, immediately my phone was ringing in the middle of the night. Exactly, what is this news, Abhishek? You said that code commit is so stable, it is secure. This is this and that, and this is going away. We need this to get this done immediately, and then after this thing solved, the next question comes that whether other services which we have used for CI/CD deployments like code build, code deploy, are they staying or not? though are they being heavily used or not, we don't know behind the scenes exactly how many customers are using. From my side, yeah, definitely is being used, CodeCommit was being used, but from AWS perspective, on this larger scale, it might not be heavily used like other CI/CD tools that are being compared. But the thing is, now it is difficult for me to suggest to any client that okay, this is something you can leverage it out, and out of the blue that this is going away. So yes, this article kind of, when I go like, not everyone is speaking that freely, and that in the article they are talking in this way, that this, like he described, that this is something which was not expected kind of thing. And definitely AWS has to see about it, that exactly they can't resolve the service right away, because they had to consider about the existing clients. Either they get the communicated that this is going away, and they should migrate it and provide the support, they definitely they will do. But the thing is that out these news type of things coming outside in the public forum, instead of coming internally initially, makes a panic around within the clients who are already leveraging it. So this is something which was not expected, but yeah, what can be done?
Yeah, we've been quite vocal at Logicata about one of the reasons for choosing AWS is that they don't do this sort of thing. So it is quite disappointing the way that this came about and was communicated with such short notice. So hopefully, with the backlash, AWS will learn from this and not do this in this way in the future. But let's see. Anyway, on that note, let's move on to the final article we have for this week. I'm conscious of time, so we'll just spend a couple of minutes on this one. This is an announcement on gov.uk from the Chancellor that the UK has secured an $8 billion Amazon Web Services investment, which obviously is going to be a significant investment in building out new infrastructure in the UK. There has, of course, been lots of investment in other regions, including India, Abhishek. But just so happened that this announcement was made in the last week. So, yeah, John, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to. Well, I think this is the first Gov UK article we've ever had on the podcast, so there was that. And I wanted to say the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves MP, and get that all in one kind of go, because that's such a mouthful. It's just, yeah, 8 billion sounds like a lot. Amazon, more generally, AWS have invested quite a lot more in other parts of the world. To be fair, the UK does already have an AWS region. It's EUS2. It's in London. Fine. So the UK already has had a fair chunk of AWS money. There's big offices here. I mean, there's like, I don't know, 6 AWS offices in London alone, something silly. I've been in, I think, 2 of them. So it sounds like a lot. It's probably really not actually all that big of an investment, because it supports what, 14,000 jobs a year out of how many people work in the UK? 35 million or something. It's not really that big. Nice to see some investment. And it's what's it saying? It's saying about, the whole of the UK and this and that and the other. And yeah, okay, I bet you 20 quid it ends up mostly in London, because these things do.
What I found amusing about this article is when we asked ChatGPT for a summary of it, it still thought the Chancellor was Jeremy Hunt, because obviously the free version of ChatGPT isn't connected to the internet, so it's missed the fact that they've now got a new government in power.
Which is fun, because the article even says Rachel Reeves is the Chancellor in the article.
I know, yeah, but ChatGPT hallucinated that it was still Jeremy Hunt. Anyway, thoughts on this, Abhishek?
Definitely, like basically, on the first pointer, like we do have coming 2 regions in India as well. So Bangalore and Delhi are coming very live, I think, by, I don't know the timelines, they have not introduced it yet, but yeah, very soon. I think they, on the private testing, they have introduced it for Bangalore, and for other regions they will introduce very soon. But definitely, this $8 billion, as John said, is by the marketing perspective, it looks big, but it's not, because for other regions they have heavily invested a lot. And considering like 14,000 jobs is estimate, they are mentioning that yes, this is something will be coming around with this type of investment, but we never know exactly what is the number of jobs that are going to be indulged with this region upliftment. And when basically how these jobs will be transcended and how stability they will be providing into this region. Because now the thing is, they need to sell it to the lot of clients that this region they need to use it, so they need to undersell it initially. So we might not see that much of the verge of immediately that clients are running for it to grab it this region and get around it, and a lot of immediate jobs are coming, and a lot of um, impact is being visible. But yeah, going through timelines, yeah, definitely it will be um, in terms of application optimizations, in terms of tech savvy companies who wants to basically make their application faster for and cost efficient using edge locations. For them, this will be a pretty good addition to their infrastructure. And but yeah, this is kind of, I also feel this overrated type of thing where they are marketing it. They like they should have gone a little bit more this time. They have a little bit shrink down in their investment number, where basically as it sees that the recession is also taking the investments as well, and the layoffs and everything that are happening has also impacted how AWS is visualizing their next projects as well. So kind of thing is that yes, um, I would love to see more type of regions coming online, because a lot of regions were planned to come online and they were ready to be deployed at a console level, but seems like they went on standby out of the blue and all the deadlines were pushed away for the next year. But definitely, the more applications are coming, because as clients are coming more and more on cloud, they are looking for on-premise to cloud migrations. So this is where basically I feel that why like uh, these regions are not coming to play, where like I gave an exact starting, like Bangalore was supposed to come and still not yet available. And though a lot of Indian client applications are right now trying to come online with their new type of ideologies, identities, and applications, are something AWS offer, which is kind of a dev environment setup where with low cost running systems I can get into AWS and basically scale up to a mid-size or a big giant as well if my application works, instead of going with the on-prem system where I have to basically pay a lot of from my own pocket. So kind of thing where now this is something which is becoming like a big giant business, where only kind of who those who have played, they are getting optimized in some way. But now this type of things in the are not coming like these how these things are on the digital platform or on the practical area, they are not in the same place. So I will love to see more of the investments coming more on the regions getting online, instead of like just one or two coming in a year.
Well, let's watch this space. We're regularly reporting on the international investments that AWS are making, so stay tuned to see where the money's going next. But on that note, we have reached the end of our time for season 3, episode 34 of Logicast. So it just remains for me to thank you, John, as always, for your inputs and your wonderful new angle. I can't wait until actually there is no episode next week, so I'm on holiday. So when I come back from leave, I'm curious to see what the studio setup looks like for the next episode. And thank you also, Abhishek, from joining us from space to give us your input on this week's articles. It's been great to have you on, and yeah, we thank you once more.
Thank you guys. It was very nice talking with you guys on and spending this time. And it's really, really interesting to see this type of podcast. And I really like it when you reach out to me and I just saw this first time that this type of podcasts are there, because there were audiobooks used to there. But now where live podcasts are being done, where a lot of latest tech and related to AWS, which is kind of my sweet spot. And yeah, so seeing this type of podcast is kind of mind soothing every week. One time, just putting your headsets and just listen to it and just watch the audio, feeling indulged in the raw space, where most of the podcasts I see are mostly edited and stuff, and having a raw podcast and having it like kind of like I'm into a conversation kind of thing, which is kind of a nice thing, and I really liked it. So I watch almost all like 14 part videos in one shot. So I'm a
Nice.
kind of binge
Well, there we
watcher.
go. You're a convert. Well, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Logicast is mind soothing. So if you'd like your mind soothed, tune in to all previous 84 episodes or however many it is we've done. And we do record weekly as well. We are available from wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to see John's latest studio angle, you can also watch our podcast on YouTube. So that's all we have time for this week. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next time.